comes to marketing is probably one of the most misunderstood topics outside of Facebook ads, Twitter, Google, all that stuff. Email is 100% slept on. I think, one of the biggest things that I see people slip up on when it comes to email marketing is
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ecommerce Coffee Break podcast. In today's episode, we want to talk about 3 email strategies that you have never heard of. So what that is, we will find out. And joining me for this is Gavin Havenson. He's an email marketing expert who turns casual shoppers into loyal customers. He creates campaigns that really get results by blending storytelling with smart targeting. So let's welcome him to the show. Hi, Gavin. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Email marketing, one of my favorite topics because it does so much to businesses and there's so much storytelling in there and there's so much creativity in there. I want to dive into this. First question, as always, is what's the biggest mistake you see that most brands make with email marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So nice to meet you. I run an email and SMS marketing agency focusing purely on email and SMS. And email is one of those things that I think out of everything when it comes to marketing is probably one of the most misunderstood topics outside of Facebook ads, Twitter, Google, all that stuff. Email is 100% slept on. I think, one of the biggest things that I see people slip up on when it comes to email marketing is treating your database exactly the same, regardless of how they've interacted with your business in the past. And this kind of goes into one of my main points that I want to talk about today, and that's the difference between customers and non-customers. It's one of the easiest splits you can make across every single automation, every single campaign, every single pop-up form that you have. But one of the biggest slip-ups is businesses, they'll have one campaign and they'll send that exact same campaign to their either entire database or engaged database, regardless of the customer's purchasing behavior in the past. And when it comes to email marketing, the most important thing you can really focus on is the subscription to conversion rate. How many subscribers you can turn into first-time customers. And then after that, it's your retention rate. And so one of the easiest ways, you can kind of move the needle and influence the subscription to conversion rate, which is somebody subscribing on your pop-up form or subscribing to your email marketing and then turning into a first-time customer, is to reiterate offers throughout every single message a non-customer gets from both a flow, which is automation, and a campaign perspective. This one of the easiest ways to really do this is, let's say you have a campaign content calendar, right? And in that campaign content calendar, you have, let's say, 10 campaigns for a given month. And let's say all of those campaigns are educational in nature, right? Most businesses will just say, hey, at the very least, or at the most, what we're going to do right now is segment our database by who's engaged with our email marketing. And by engaged, that might mean opened or clicked or placed an order in the last 90 days. And we did this recently with one of our clients. It was really interesting where we did that, but then we also took that engaged segment and split it up by who had placed an order and who had not. We sent those 2 segments the exact same content calendar, right? The exact same content calendar, same educational emails. The only difference was, for those who'd never placed an order before, in every single one of those emails, we wove in the offer that was provided in the welcome series. And we knew for a fact that those people hadn't actually used that incentive yet because they were in the engaged non-purchaser segment. And the reality is, if you have an offer, getting that first purchase across the line is one of the hardest things you can actually do. And reiterating that offer is one of the easiest ways to get that first purchase across the line. What we found with this client when we sent this campaign and we had this, this splitting up, 80% of the revenue from email marketing, and this is probably going to be consistent across most brands, 80% of your email marketing revenue from a campaign perspective is going to come from people who've already placed an order once. 20% comes from those who've never placed an order before. So it's so important to get that first purchase across the line. And we do that by reiterating the offer that we gave them on our sign-up forms in our welcome series in those campaigns. It's one of the easiest splits that everyone seems to slip up on. It's not trying as best as you can to get that first purchase across the line. Now, some people may be listening to this and being like, "Oh my God, I don't really want to give away, margin on my, my first purchase." And, you kind of honestly, like the reality is you kind of have to nowadays. When the online shopping experience usually goes something like this. They go onto your website, they find a product, then they go onto Amazon to see if they can find it cheaper. And if they can, they buy it on Amazon. If you can keep people in your ecosystem, and then you don't even get their email address if they buy it on Amazon. If you can keep people in your ecosystem by getting that first purchase, by giving them the incentive, you're going to make up for any loss in that initial margin on the second and third and fourth purchase, which played out when we saw that 80% of the revenue was coming from that existing customer database, people who already placed an order once. So honestly, it's personalization, but it's broad personalization that people slip up on. And by personalization, I mean just splitting the audience by purchasing behavior in the past.
Oh my God, there was so many golden nuggets in there, which just was a very quick masterclass. So we're touching on deliverability. Said 90 days, you sort of filter them out. Very, very important. Then obviously the welcome flow. And I want to touch on the welcome flow. I think a lot of merchants out there, they're too scared to really create a in-depth welcome flow. And coming from a pop-up, also very, very important. Talk me through the process of signing up, going through the welcome flow in the first place. So where do you collect email addresses? And then how long should the welcome flow be?
Sure. So I'm gonna touch on a few little things here. The process of somebody going into your welcome flow typically happens from two sources. The first one is through some sort of pop-up on your website, right? Typical pop-ups can be displayed, and I'll dive into this a little bit more when I talk a bit more about pop-ups, but pop-up after 8 seconds and then a flyout after 45 seconds. So I'll explain that in a little bit more depth later. But somebody goes onto your website, they see an offer, 10 to 15 to 20% off. They're like, "Hey, I want that." They hit enter. They put their email address. Really important note, make sure you include your discount code on the pop-up form. Do not force somebody to leave your website to find the coupon code to get distracted to then give you money. It doesn't make any sense. Now, in that welcome series, that's the first source of traffic, people coming from the pop-ups. The other source of traffic is going to be from people subscribing at checkout and not finishing an order. The goal of the welcome series is to get that first purchase across the line. A lot of people say it's to educate about the brand, it's to tell your story. What they're really saying is get that first purchase across the line. Because if you're trying to educate a brand, what you're actually trying to do is convince somebody to spend money with you. Now, how do you get that first purchase across the line in the welcome series? First email that you send in that welcome series should come out immediately after somebody signs up, okay? Now, obviously, add a filter at the top of your welcome series to exclude people if they've placed an order before, because there's no point in trying to convince somebody to place an order if they've already placed their first order. Say things like, "Hey, here's 10%, 15% off your first order," and they've already placed that order. It doesn't make any sense. But in the first email, give them the incentive that you promised them in the sign up form, right? Hey, here's 10, 15, 20% off. Now, if they subscribe at checkout, they're probably not even going to know about this discount, right? Reiterate it nonetheless. Header image, super clear. Here's 15, 20% off. Make that your primary focus. Now, my approach to welcome series is a little bit different. When it comes to email marketing, on average, right, those who subscribe for the discount code and who place an order, 75% of people, if not more, are going to place that order, if they do ever place an order, in the first 72 hours of receiving that discount code, okay? Now, what that tells me is that when somebody's in buying behavior, the brand that's going to win that individual over is the brand that has, yes, obviously the best product, but also the brand who reiterates their offer the most to the person in the buying window. So I typically have a second email after that first email that comes 12 hours after, 12 hours, that reiterates the discount code, okay? That's all it does. Perhaps you can include some bestseller stuff, but reiterates the discount code. I'm going to try and send as many emails as I possibly can without being just overly obnoxious. I'm not going to be sending an email every hour, but I'm going to try and send as many emails as I can within that first 72-hour window to get that purchase across the line. Second email, reiterate the offer. A third email, you can time this after either a day or 2 days at this point, because you're getting close now to that 72-hour window, is highlighting bestsellers once again and potentially weaving in some guarantees, free shipping stuff. Only after that am I focusing on brand story, connection to the founders. And when I talk about brand, I don't actually try and develop a connection with the brand per se. I try and develop a connection with the people behind the brand. For businesses doing, at least in my experience, under $50 million in revenue a year, they should be leaning a lot more into that. Hi, my name's John. This is my wife, Julie. We've created a business. It's so nice to have you supporting us. People care about people at that point, and they start to care about the brand as a whole when you get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Like nobody really cares about the CEO of JP Morgan when they're deciding whether or not they're going to trust the bank, right? That has a big enough of a reputation to rely on that. When you're smaller, it's the people to people connection. Then you start reiterating those messages in the welcome series. Now, in terms of your question, like how long should a welcome series be? I don't actually have so much of a set rule on this. One cool trick I've done in the past for welcome series is I have my initial welcome series, which can be anywhere between 4 to 5 to 6 emails long, reiterating the offer, highlighting bestsellers and guarantees, forming connection with the brand. And one cool thing you can actually do is go into your historical campaigns, find the campaigns that have gotten the best engagement that are not sales focused, okay, and not time sensitive. So if you have like an email that was education on product X that got really good open rates and click rates, take that email, build it into the welcome series after a certain time delay, probably after 4 or 5 days, because you're getting into this cadence now of people where if they haven't purchased, the likelihood of them purchasing gradually decreases, and you just want to put them in a continuous nurture sequence. But take your evergreen content from a campaign perspective, repurpose it, make sure it doesn't go to waste, and build it into your welcome series, and just ensure that you update that email with the offer that you've given in the welcome series. This gives you a great opportunity to essentially recycle content, save money and time on having to create new campaigns, and ensure that any new people are on a consistent funnel that gets high engagement going forward.
Mhm. That's a very, very good example, and specifically for our listeners who always I have no idea what to put into an email. This is a perfect email flow, and that gives you also an idea where you can get additional content for your emails. So very well done. Now let's dive into pop-up forms. You mentioned in the beginning that you segmenting the visitors, your website visitors, your store visitors with pop-up forms. How does that work, and how does that go into email automation?
Yeah, great question. Pop-up forms are one of the most underutilized tools with email marketing that I see out there in the whole suite of tools that email marketing has. Pop-ups are first and foremost a tool to get a first purchase across the line. Second to that, it's getting the email subscription. It's not the other way around. A lot of people think it's the other way around. Let me get their email first and then the discount code. How I create pop-up forms is the first thing I do is I create a pop-up that's designed as a pop-up that clearly highlights the offer, only asks for their email address, doesn't ask for their first name, doesn't ask for what they're interested in, does not ask for SMS, and then displays after 8 seconds. Once they enter their email address, you have an option here. You can either immediately display them the discount code, make sure you display the discount code on the pop-up. Also, make sure you have a desktop and a mobile version of each pop-up. Okay, so you don't want to have two people looking at the same pop-up if they're on a phone or if they're on a desktop device. Split the audience according to that. Now, when it comes to the pop-up, you can have the second step be the success message. Here's your discount code. Or you can have a second step that says, hey, what are you interested in? Tell us what you like. Why are you shopping with us? This is called zero-party data collection, and you can take this data here and create segments down the road or even splits within your welcome series to send people down curated paths that speak specifically to their issues. A classic example for a supplement brand would be, hey, why are you shopping with us? I'm trying to sleep better. I'm trying to improve my running. Two different issues, two very different emails you should send somebody to convince them to buy. Depending on what they select, you send them down a different path in the welcome series, or you send them different campaigns in the future. Now, When it comes to the pop-up form, then you have that as an 8-second delay. Then you want to duplicate that pop-up form, okay? And you
Mhm.
want to have it set as a flyout after 45 seconds. And you want to show this to people who haven't subscribed to email marketing yet. It's essentially another opportunity to reiterate your offer to your subscribers who have closed the 8-second pop-up form. It seems kind of crazy, right? Because a lot of people think, hey, you know what? I'm going to create a pop-up form. I'll have it show up once. If they close it, they never see my welcome offer again. That doesn't make any sense. We should give people another opportunity, especially after 45 seconds, which means they've had a bit more familiarity with the brand, to see that offer and convince and get that really subscription to conversion rate even higher. And what these forms do is they actually increase the on-site conversion rates. Now,
Mhm.
one of the things a lot of email marketers do is they force people to go into their email to get the discount code, which is a stupid idea because when it comes to email marketing, yes, forcing somebody on the pop-up, say like at the final step, go to your email to see your coupon code, that makes us email marketers look really good because it increases our attributed revenue because they have to interact with an email to then place an order. That makes us look amazing. But what it does is it costs the business sales because somebody leaves their website, goes into their inbox, drops off. It doesn't make any sense. Make it as easy as possible for somebody to give you money. Those are the flyout and the pop-up forms. Pop-up after 8 seconds, flyout after 45 seconds. Okay. Then what you can do is you can create another pop-up form that targets a very specific segment of subscribers, those who've subscribed to email marketing, who subscribed more than 3 days ago and have not
Mhm.
placed an order. You can create another flyout form that displays the discount code to those people. Doesn't ask for their email address, doesn't ask for SMS. It just says, hey, here's your discount code. Don't forget to use it. What this does is it increases your on-site conversion rates again. And so using pop-ups is a great way, yeah, to grow your list, but also really helps dial in the on-site conversion rate.
So, Gavin, that was a really good overview about how to facilitate pop-ups in your marketing strategy. Now, some listeners might not have the marketing or technical background or skills, or just simply lack the time to implement this themselves. How do you help your customers, or what would you recommend they should do to get a proper email marketing set up?
Yeah, so great question. And what you need is going to vary according to the size of your business. So, apart from the stuff that I've already mentioned previously, if you're a brand doing under really 30 to $40,000 a month in revenue, getting the fundamentals set up, so those basic automations, getting a really simple welcome series, really simple abandon cart, browse abandon, and just having that stuff set up is going to put you ahead of pretty much 95% of the market. Now, how you actually do that is pretty straightforward. I think actually within the show notes to this, I'll give you guys a document that outlines the exact flows that you can literally copy and paste into your own business, and that'll help you a lot. Now, if you're a larger business and you don't have a whole lot of time on your hands, i.e., you're doing over $40,000 a month, the incremental gains that you can get from having an expert on board really helps play out in the long run. Now, what do I mean by that? So if you're an e-commerce business, you're doing $40,000 a month. If you can increase the conversion rate, let's say, of one email or one flow by 10%, in the immediate term, it's going to have a small impact. But if you're building an automation in the long term, that automation, once it's built, is going to have benefits that compound really for up to 2 to 3 years in the future. And so small adjustments that someone, like myself can bring to the table and that small little elements of expertise, once done initially, will have benefits that compound over the long term in a way that, for a smaller business, it's not really going to warrant bringing someone on like myself. Now, so for example, if I can help get your abandoned cart, increase the conversion rates by 10%, if you're doing like $5,000 a month on your e-commerce store,
Right.
it's not worth it, right? It's not worth hiring someone like myself. Get those fundamentals set up, get the basics sort of set up. But if you're bigger, it definitely plays a much bigger part. If you're really trying to do this on a shoestring budget when it comes to the campaigns, so flows are one part of email marketing, right? As our sign up forms. And once you get the flows done, they're usually going to last you for a long time. Campaigns, if you're once again on that under 40K mark, $40,000 mark, I really recommend just putting together some campaigns for yourself. One campaign a week is gonna really do a lot for you. Just send out an educational email, try and tie a connection between the people behind the brand rather than the brand itself, and just have that value driven, personalized, human touch email come out on like a weekly basis. People are going to resonate more with the people behind the brand rather than the brand, more so rather than the brand itself, right? Now, if you're a bigger business, it starts paying off to actually have some solid strategy behind what you do. So segmentation to different segments, splitting your audience up based off of purchase behavior, and really crunching the numbers a little bit, because the incremental gains that you're going to get, they are worth the investment in somebody that can have those skill sets.
Now I see that there's a synergy effect in there. That the more data obviously you have, the more you can play around with it, the more segments you can set up. And I also think if you're a new brand and you're fresh and you're starting, you might be just more motivated or have more ideas in mind that you want to test. Bigger brands, and that's my gut feeling, correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes run into the risk that they don't see the forest because of the trees. They sort of need a fresh set of eyes to look into their campaigns, to really optimize and get new impact, new input from outside to make it really work. Now, who's your perfect customer? What kind of industries on these do you work most with?
Yeah, so I work great with e-commerce businesses that are doing over $40,000 a month in revenue when it comes to that active management side of things. So jumping into their accounts, figuring out what campaigns can be implemented, how we can improve things across the entire account. When it comes to the niche specifically, email marketing, there are nuances to every single niche, right? And the big nuances come from figuring out how to time flows from like a repurchasing behavior perspective, i.e., it's time for us to cross-sell product X based off of their purchase for product Y, because the average use time for that product takes 20 days. And that's going to vary from industry to industry. But, I've worked with over, coming at this point now, it's been about 5 years. I've worked with over 300 businesses across a range of niches. I think the companies that I work really, really well, or that email marketing rather, works really, really well with, your classic health, wellness, beauty, supplement brands. We work with a lot of furniture and household brands as well, which is quite interesting as of late, and a lot of food brands too. The great thing about these, wellness brands or beauty brands or food brands, and sometimes, home good brands, is the element of adding subscription opportunities into both your product offerings, but also into your marketing strategy too. And, retention becomes really important at that point when you do have a subscription model kind of built in, because the education around continued use, the importance of continued use of products, really gets emphasized a lot when it comes to those types of niches and verticals.
I think we can do a separate episode only about subscriptions, because it's such a good topic, and there's so much potential in subscription businesses. But we leave this for another time. Could you share some success stories or case studies of business that you have worked with? You don't need to name the brand, and what kind of success they saw.
Yeah, so I think the biggest measure for success when it comes to email marketing, there's a few. A lot of people talk about open rates and click rates, right? But really, it doesn't. You can segment your audience however you want, and I can get open rates of 90% if I just segment your audience by the most 10 recent customers, right? And I send to a very, very narrow segment of people. The real success of email marketing is the subscription to conversion rate, how many people you can take from subscriber into first-time customer. And the way that we do that and how I approach that is, as I mentioned before, creating splits across every single flow based off of the purchase behavior, creating pop-up forms that reiterate offers and talk to people differently based off of that purchasing behavior, and creating campaigns that talk to people differently based off of that purchasing behavior again, right? So splitting up the audiences. And, when it comes to that, I mean, we've seen big increases. Like, I think retention rates usually across all of our clients are sitting around, increasing from when we started, around about 50%. So retention rate, how many people you turn from first-time customer into second-time customer, comparing that to the previous time. And obviously retention extends from first to second. It can go to third to fourth to fifth, all that stuff. There's a bunch of case studies on my website, which I'm sure you guys can see in the show notes. But, I think the biggest impacts we've had are making sure that we're taking an existing database and having different conversations with different people with different campaigns, And I mean, I can chuck a bunch of numbers out, where it's like, hey, we're increasing email marketing attributed revenue by 50, 60%. But the reality is, I think the success metrics, yeah, there's a bunch of numbers, but the real thing is the success comes in the fundamentals, where it's how are you actually approaching email differently from what the previous company was doing? And, once again, check out the YouTube and the case studies on the website. We've got a bunch of stuff up there.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the links in the show notes. If somebody comes to you, what's a typical onboarding process? How does it look like?
Yeah, great question. So, a lot of people come to us there's two types of people who come to us. One, they have zero email marketing, or two, they've been doing email marketing and they want some improvements. For those who have zero email marketing, step number one is figuring out the fundamentals of the business and actually figuring out the tone of voice and the look and feel for the emails that we're going to be putting together.
Mhm.
So really the first 2 days is us diving deep into the business, figuring out the styles that the person likes. And we have like a media library of over 639 different emails that we can model emails off of. So we send that over, hey, select three that you like, we'll model your own emails off of that. And then, it's about journey mapping. So if you don't have any email marketing, odds are you need that baseline, the flows, the
Mhm.
automations to support pretty much the customer journey at every point. We're going to journey map that together. So if a client was like, yeah, we want to do this, we jump on a call, we would go through that journey mapping process of, hey, somebody places an order. When are they going to place a second order? Okay, that's going to trigger this email, this email, this email. Let's map out exactly what the customer journey is going to look like at every single point of their life cycle, from first interaction with your business all the way to, hey, they haven't opened an email in the last 180 days. How do we treat that conversation there? Now, for companies who already have email marketing, and this is usually your businesses that are doing that over 40K a month mark, the first port of call is for us to actually take a look at the account, right? And
Mhm.
flows, the fundamentals, making sure those are set up properly. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of agencies don't really know what they're doing. There's a lot of jack of all trade agencies out there where like we're a marketing agency and they slap email on and they don't actually understand the basics. And so, we're going to go in there and see what's working, what's not, and actually apply best practice. Probably do a similar journey mapping session as well. So mapping out, this is what your current flows are telling us. This is how we should restructure them. And then it's jumping into the campaigns too, seeing how the deliverability is currently looking and seeing what campaigns are resonating historically and how we can implement that going forward with an ongoing content calendar, right? Because a lot of the times the content calendar from last year is going to have changed going into the next year or this year. So we go ahead and take those learnings from the previous years, implement that with a new flair going forward.
Mhm. No, I like the white glove approach there. And I'm doing email marketing for 25 years, and I still believe email marketing is one of the strongest pillars or strongest tools you have in the toolbox as a marketeer, and that will not go away. Now, with this approach that you have, and I like that this is very personalized, what's your pricing structure?
Yeah, so we just did a bunch of reworking on a lot of our pricing, but if you're going for the active campaign management, so us taking full charge of your campaigns, where it's scripting, design, building, reporting, segmenting, all that stuff, you're looking at about $2,000 per month. Then if you're doing the flow rebuilds, so getting all those core automations done, and the great thing about this is once it's done, it's done. There's no ongoing fees on my end. This is going to really last you. The way that I build them, it's going to last
Mhm.
you, assuming you don't have a massive brand or rebrand that happens, anywhere from 3 to 4 years, right? Now, obviously, if you introduce a bunch of new SKUs, there's adjustments that need to be made there. But depending on how many flows you're after, you're looking at anywhere between $4,000 to $5,000. And for an individual automation, we just charge a one-off fee of $1,000, and that includes the scripting, the design, and custom journeys for your business. It's not just cut and paste, right? Like we're actually looking at your business and creating automations specifically for your customer lifecycle rather than a generic customer lifecycle that we assume this person's going to do this, right?
I think there's money very well spent, and I think still it's very affordable for what you get. It's customized, it's fitted or tailor-made for your business, and as you said, it will last you for a very, very long time, which is, I think, that's great value for money there. Before we come to the end of our coffee break today, is there anything that you want to share with our listeners that we haven't covered yet?
I think big thing I want to push is my YouTube channel and my newsletter. Now, I'm going to give you guys some resources after this podcast that's going to highlight designs, automations, but check out the YouTube because I put a bunch of stuff. Pretty much my whole philosophy is, information for free and then implementation for a fee. So you can learn everything that I know for free out there. And if you have the time, do it yourself. And if you trust yourself, do it yourself. But if you're looking to save time and if you're looking for real good attention to detail, that's where I kind of come in. I think one thing I do want to say with email marketing, if people are looking at hiring other agencies or looking to actually bring on another professional, make sure you have very solid KPIs that actually impacts the business, and don't let an agency try and sell you, at least for me, I'm not a big fan of revenue share deals, especially when it comes to email marketing, because attributed revenue with Klaviyo is not the same as actual revenue generated. And if
Mhm.
you recall, when I talked about the sign up form stuff, one simple thing that an agency can do that can really skew the numbers that actually affects the business but actually benefits the agency is not applying a coupon code at the end of the sign up form process, right? Now, that forces them into the welcome series, which increases attributable revenue, which makes the agency look a hell of a lot better and also increases their commission because they're getting a revenue share, but it doesn't actually help the business. In fact, it actually hurts the business. So I think just be skeptical of the deals that get flown out and thrown around out there, and make sure that the work that the agency does for you when it comes to email doesn't just benefit email as a medium, but benefits the
Mhm.
entire business, and make sure there's not like a disconnect there.
Very wise words. Yeah, when it comes to agencies, you need to do your homework and find a partner that you really can work with and a partner that you can trust. Where can people try to reach you directly, Gavin?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. We'll have links to that. But if you just Google inbox email marketing, in hyphen box email marketing, we should come up. And then just go ahead and Google my name on YouTube, Gavin Hewitson, and I'll come up there too. And I'm super active on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So any of those mediums work for me.
Perfect. As mentioned, all the links will be in the show notes. So if you're listening now, go down there, check out Gavin. He has tons of content out there and lots of free stuff out there, and get yourself upgraded on email marketing. And if you need help, reach out to him. Gavin, thanks so much for your time today. It was a really good overview. I like it.
Thank you for having me.